Hi, welcome to Next Day Solar. My name is Saeed, and today we're going to have an overview of the installation we've done so far this year and last year. And we've shown you on our YouTube channel how to install step by step, and today we're going to go in detail on those installations and find out how they've been doing so far. So join me on this journey and let's do it. So here we're going to have an overview of a Solis system, and Solis system is usually used with a Solis hybrid inverter or Solis PV inverter, and most installations we have with the hybrid inverter. So that means most installation we have are a inverter combined with a battery. The batteries are sometimes different from installations to installation, so we mostly use Pylon-Tech batteries, but we also use a Fox LV low voltage batteries. So the first system that we're going to go in depth was a system that we installed last mid-August, and it was a 4.5 kilowatt system. So that was 10 panels of JA Solar, 450 watt, and 6 panels on the pitch roof and 4 panels on the flat roof. So far that system has generated 2.2 megawatt, which is 2,200 kilowatt hour of solar. And as you can see here in the graph that I've taken a yearly graph, you can see the months, and since we've installed this system on half of the month in August, you can see that the generation wasn't quite high, but immediately you can see it picks up in September. We had a good generation, and the customer here doesn't quite use a lot, and most of it actually goes to the batteries, and some of it goes back to the grid. And you can see October is quite going down. It dips in the month of November and again in December, and starts picking up slowly in January, then February, and then March, and then April it starts skyrocketing, and so it goes higher also in May. We only are at 23rd of May, so we're still hoping that that it's going to go higher than the number that you see here at the moment, and the best months are actually to come, which is going to be June, July, and August again, and September. So we expect this system to perform quite high, and it has been a really good year for this customer. As you can see here, there is an overview of what the customer is actually using at this moment. And this was 4 minutes ago, because this one gives you a snapshot of every 5 minutes. So the solar has been generating 2.3 kilowatts at the moment, and that means 1.2 was going to the batteries, and the house is only using almost a kilowatt, and a bit of it goes back to the grid, but that is always some of it always goes back to the grid, and it's just to keep the system in check. And now that it has updated, you can see that solar has picked up, and now it's 3.6 kilowatt being generated, and 2 kilowatt going to the batteries, and 1.3 kilowatt being used by the house, and which is this one is the load of the house. And you can see here an overview of the Met Office weather, and today is a bit cloudy, so even in a cloudy day, if you get a bit of a glare, nice sun glare, you can have a nice production of you can have a nice production of solar even in a cloudy day. And we're only at this moment at 11 a.m. and so far today the generation was 4.3 kilowatt, which is great, because the house only consumed 4 kilowatt at this hour. So the total yield of today so far was 4.5 kilowatt, and at this hour is 11 a.m. and the house has consumed 4 kilowatt since the whole day today, and which is great. So this is it for this installation. This customer is a very happy customer, and one battery of Fox 5 kilowatt was enough for this customer. He's actually able to charge the battery and during the day with the excess of PV, and use it throughout the day and at night. And as we've seen here, that he's actually pushing back quite a lot back to the grid, so he might need another battery, but it's quite unnecessary for him because he's not using a lot of energy. So that's a good system. So let's move on to the next one. So on this installation we have a system of 7.9 kilowatt of PV array, and we've installed here a 5 kilowatt Solis inverter and 2 batteries of Pylon-Tech 4.8 kilowatts. So that is a 9.6 kilowatt battery storage. And the system is quite complex because we had 3 different facing roofs. We had 19 panels installed, and they were scattered a bit about around the property. So we have some panels facing east, some panels facing west, and some panels facing south. So you can see here the video, this link. And the total output of the system is 7.9 kilowatt in terms of array in PV. And reason why we did install a 5 kilowatt inverter is because with the DNO it was quicker to actually have the installation completed, and the customer wanted to do so. At this hour the PV is generating 3.2 kilowatt, and it's now 11:20 a.m. So it's generating 3.2 kilowatt, and 1 kilowatt is going to the batteries, and 2 kilowatt is going to the load of the house, and 430 watts is going back to the grid. And so far this system has generated 1.5 megawatt, which is 1,500 kilowatt. And it's we've installed this installation at the end of January, so as you can see here on the monthly yield it was quite low, but then it started to pick up. We had a very cloudy and weather was unpredictable in February, and then we had a good March, and onwards it picked up on April, and May is still ongoing, and the best months are still to come. And you can see here on this graph a yearly consumption of the property, and generation and self-consumption. I'm gonna focus here on last month, which was April. So the consumption was 2,038 kilowatt hour. Out of those 2,038 kilowatt hour, and energy from the grid was only 1,438. So the rest of it came from the PV and the battery storage. So it was quite good for this property, because this is a high consuming property in terms of energy. And as you can see, 1/4 of it, a bit more than 1/4 of it, came from solar. So this is a customer that wanted to have an impact and on their consumption, and lower their carbon footprint. So they are actually improving day by day and how they use the system, and how to be more ecological. And this inverter it has the capability of giving them an overview of their consumption, which in theory will make them realize what's using a lot of energy, and maybe in the future change it. That was it for this one, and let's move on to the next one. So on this installations, we haven't done any YouTube videos, and it's actually some of the installation that we think that are very key on understanding the differences, and within installation we have videos. So on this one it was quite a simple one. So we've installed 14 panels, Jinko's 470 watt. We've split them into 2 strings, and one string had 10 panels and the other string had 4 panels. The string with the 10 panels were facing south, and the strings with 4 panels are facing west. So you can see here an overview of the system, and you can see that at this hour it's generating 2.9 kilowatt. It's now 11:45 a.m. and the batteries are 90%. The load of the house is actually taking now 2.4 kilowatt, and so the solar is actually prioritizing, the PV is prioritizing and pushing it to the load of the property, and the rest of it is going back, is going to the batteries, and some of it is coming from the grid. So this property so far has generated 870 kilowatt hour, and we've only installed this project since March this year, so it's quite fairly a new project. And you can see that today's yield was 8 kilowatt, so solar has generated today 8 kilowatt. Out of those 8 kilowatt, and the consumption of the property was 6 kilowatt. So the batteries, it has charged 5 kilowatt on the batteries, and the discharge on the batteries was a 3 kilowatt of energy. So on this property we installed one 5 kilowatt hybrid inverter Solis, and 2 batteries, 2 Pylon-Tech 4.8 kilowatt batteries. So that's a total of 9.6 kilowatt hour of battery storage. And you can see here so far the yield of the property, and since we only done the job since end of March, start with the month of April. And you can see here total generation was 342. throughout the month, and energy to the grid was 94 kilowatt hour, and the house used 248, and we pushed, and some of the energy was pushed to the batteries, and that was 132 kilowatt hour. So if we look at the consumption, the total consumption of the property was 305 kilowatt hour. So energy from the grid in this instance is quite different from the other project that I've shown you earlier. So in here, and you have energy from the grid, which means the customer actually took it from the grid was 33 kilowatt and for the whole month. And so out of that 305 kilowatt, 271 was from PV, and only 33 kilowatt was from the grid. And you can see it climbs up on the month of May, and we're still not finished with the month of May, and you can see the total consumption was 516 kilowatt hour. And again here, and most of it is coming from the PV, and that is 473 kilowatt hour is generated from PV. So it's a very fairly new installation, and it's performing quite very high, and that's due to the perfect location of that property, and having 10 panels actually south facing and 4 panels facing west. So that means profiting most of the energy generated throughout the day with the south facing panels, and in the afternoon with the west facing panels in the south facing panels. Thank you very much for watching the part 1 of this video. I hope it helps you understand how we overview a system. And in our next video, we're going to be looking at Fox inverters and Huawei inverters, Victron and SolarEdge. So stay tuned for our next video, and thank you very much for watching.